Mr. AHMADZADA, let me start with the first question. How do you assess the current situation in Azerbaijan considering the takeover of the Nagorno-Karabakh region?
Yeah, since 1991, it is the first time that Azerbaijan functions fully within its internationally recognized borders. That is a huge challenge from the one hand, also something that is quite unprecedented, and that was a bit unexpected to a degree if we are trying to put the whole conflict into the one, let's say, chronological spectrum. Since it is the first time that it fully controls not only Nagorno-Karabakh but also 7 adjacent territories, the question arises whether what will be the founding stone of Azerbaijani national identity from now on, since it was largely centered around the fact that Karabakh was under Armenian occupation. Now the occupation has gone. The question is what will come the next. Then the huge challenge lies on the fact that there will be need for the comprehensive effort of demining of the areas as well as reconstructing the places so formerly internally displaced persons can return. But this is a challenge on a multiple levels, be it economic one, financial ones, be it the capacity-wise, be it the other type of the things that have the, let's say, the possibility of hindering this return.
Let me turn a bit to the peace agreement, the possible peace agreement. There is talk how the countries will proceed now. So there was the possibility and the talks in Brussels, then there was a Washington initiative, Moscow initiative. So how do you see it now after this current development which happened in late September? Where do you see, or do you see a possibility for a peace agreement to be signed between Azerbaijan and Armenia?
Unfortunately, we see the Armenian and Azerbaijani peace process have stalled to a degree that it is so low point that is not even matched to the 2020 war, because during the 2020 war, even during the 2020 war, we have seen multilateral attempts to facilitate talks, but now there is no war, obviously, but there is no talks anymore. So Armenian and Azerbaijani negotiations have largely stopped, with a few, let's say, exceptional meetings occurring in between of this afterwards of September 19th, September 20th. What we see is that there is a pattern coming from especially Azerbaijan of making the settlement process largely the international, in a sense that we've seen Brussels and Washington format are largely considered as not sustainable formats from now on in Baku's point of view, whereas there's also increased rhetoric on need for continuing talks in Georgia. But on the other hand, you can obviously feel that, let's say, the fears of Armenian side, and there's a cautious approach of the Armenian side towards the bilateral negotiations, just because the power disbalance or asymmetrical relationship is so obvious that it should be expected from Armenia to act as such.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that there is a possibility for the conflict to erupt again in a more violent point of view, or do you think that for Azerbaijan the issue is closed and done?
Well, I think we're living quite in unpredictable times. It doesn't mean that the previous period was quite predictable, but still now with the great power competition reaching its zenith points, that is, there is also likelihood of Armenia and Azerbaijan conflict becoming more and more proxy war rather than interstate conflict, with some intrastate element of it. So from that perspective, if that is the assumption that we may have as a fact, in a sense that the great power competition is becoming more severe, so is the Armenian and Azerbaijani relations. So we can expect, let's say, continuation of rivalry akin to Indian-Pakistani rivalry to a degree. That is where you don't have large-scale violence erupting in the form of one state invading another or vice versa, but rather you have continuous rivalry with some eruption of some skirmishes on the border, with no peace agreement, with no, let's say, open, with no talks, with no normalization, with no reconciliation efforts. So I see Armenia and Azerbaijan going, unfortunately, in this direction, which is something unfortunate, but I also see the ways, perhaps hopefully there are also ways to stop this happening.
Mm-hmm. last but not least, I would like to ask you about your view or the view of Azerbaijan when it comes to the different countries in the region, but also the roles that the countries or the organizations have. For instance, it would be Russia, it would be Iran, Turkey especially, but also the EU. So how especially is the role of the EU perceived?
Yeah, with Russia and Iran, I mean, with Iran, it would be more or less a clear reading of the situation. Baku has, let's say, healthy suspicion of Russia and Iran, even though you can find areas in which Baku and Tehran, Baku and Moscow cooperated and did cooperate, do cooperate, and probably will cooperate from now on. But their relationship and their dynamics are on the level that it is far from being called, let's say, sustainable. So with Russia and Iran, it's always ups and downs. Then I don't see these two, let's say, capitals being regarded as the honest workers in Baku for really justified reasons. With Ankara, it is obvious that Azerbaijan considers Ankara as its closest military ally. So there is almost positive view of Ankara on every domain. With the EU, it's mixed. I mean, up until September 19th, September 20th, Azerbaijan considered the EU and its mediation efforts quite positive because the direction of the things moving within the Brussels mediation were aligning with Azerbaijan's larger goals, that is, to make Armenia recognizing Azerbaijan territorial integrity. But after September 19th, I think a bit the, let's say, calculus have changed, and also a bit disappointment on Baku's end. But we'll see. I don't see Azerbaijan rejecting EU's mediation fully and openly in the long run, because also there are some interlinked elements between the EU and Azerbaijan. Decoupling of Azerbaijan from EU is impossible, as EU is Azerbaijan's largest trade partner. It means that, let's say, Iran, if we are turning it to practical terms, around $5 out of $10 comes from the Azerbaijan-EU trade. So it is practically impossible for you from decoupling from the EU. What we see is that there is a kind of agreement that we can disagree rather than long-term, like a decoupling or confrontation.
Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.